live in interesting times. Today's stories. South America's four-nation trade bloc Mercosur meet in Brazil. MEPs voice serious concern about Malta's Muscat. A crowd-funded Zimbabwean clinic provides free medical services. Tourism becomes a weapon of choice for Colombia's Columna 13 to shed the stigma of violence. Huawei moves to overturn a, quote, unlawful U.S. subsidy ban. Pompeo and Netanyahu discuss aggression from tottering Iran in Lisbon. Constitutional experts take part in a legal debate on President Trump's impeachment investigation. Trump slams congressional impeachment report as a, quote, joke. Plus, for EBC Sports, National Hockey Festival lands in Tampa, Florida. This is Eagle News coming to you from Las Vegas, bringing you stories from around the globe. I'm Anna Kui. South America's four-nation trade bloc Mercosur began a summit meeting Wednesday, reeling from U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs and a spat between its two biggest members. The leaders of Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay began a two-day meeting in the southern Brazilian town of Bento Gonçalves. Recent elections have laid bare ideological tensions between Brazil and Argentina, threatening to hamper ratification of June's historic free trade agreement with the European Union. Brazil's far-right president Jair Bolsonaro has slammed the election of Argentina's incoming leftist president Alberto Fernandez, saying he would turn his country into, quote, the Venezuela of the South. Fernandez antagonized Bolsonaro by championing the release of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva from prison, and the Brazil president will snub Fernandez's inauguration in Buenos Aires next Tuesday, having dubbed him a, quote, red bandit. The bloc's 55th summit, the last for Argentina's market-friendly president Mauricio Macri, has more immediate concerns, however, coming in the aftermath of U.S. President Donald Trump's decision Monday to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum from Argentina and Brazil. Trump accused them of manipulating their currencies to gain an unfair advantage for agricultural exports, thereby hurting U.S. farmers. Both countries stepped in to replace American exports of soybeans and other agricultural goods to China, benefiting from the U.S. trade war with the Asian giant. Longer term, the tension between South America's two biggest markets has concerned business leaders in both countries, particularly given their economic interdependence. No date has yet been set for the first meeting between Bolsonaro and Fernandez, who takes office on December 10. Brazil is Argentina's largest trading partner, and Argentina is Brazil's third largest, behind China and the United States. Brazil has even threatened to leave Mercosur, worried that Fernandez, who inherited a serious economic crisis from Macri, will fall back on protectionism. The head of a European Parliament mission to Malta on Wednesday voiced serious concern about Joseph Muscat remaining prime minister during a probe into journalist Daphne Caruana Galicia's murder.
What is the involvement of the European Parliament and the European Union? Well, Malta is a part of the European Union. Maltese citizens are our fellow Europeans. But of course, this is also about preserving the integrity of the European Union.
Caruana Galicia, a mother of three described as a one-woman WikiLeaks, was blown up in a car bomb attack near her home in October 2017. She was known for exposing cronyism and sleaze within the country's political and business elite. 3 men are facing trial for carrying out the assassination, but who ordered the murder remains a mystery. A rising tide of mass protests have called for Muscat to step down immediately over what critics have called a botched investigation into the car bombing amid wide-ranging corruption allegations.
We are very concerned with what we have seen over and heard over the last 2 days. I think that everybody agrees that there is serious pressure on the rule of law. We have serious concerns about Mr. Muscat staying in office. We have, let's say, concerns about the integrity of the murder investigation.
The outgoing Prime Minister has been accused of obstructing justice by protecting political allies and aides. Last week, his Chief of Staff, Keith Schembri, and Tourism Minister Konrad Mizzi resigned. Caruana Galizia has alleged that Schembri and Mizzi were involved in corruption, claims both men have denied. Tycoon Jorgen Fenech, arrested as he tried to leave on his yacht, has been charged with complicity in the murder. Fenech has claimed Schembri was the real mastermind behind the killing, according to police sources. Schembri was arrested last week but released 2 days later, fueling accusations of a cover-up.
The next 40 days are going to be crucial for the murder investigation, and we don't want any risk or even a perceived risk, which is just as serious, that the investigation may be compromised in any way. There has to be absolute confidence in the process, and I think when he is in office, that confidence is not there. On the murder investigation, we have seen in recent days, in particular the past week, that progress is being made, important progress has been made, which we welcome. That is a step in the direction of truth and justice. However, we still have concerns over, let's say, threats to the integrity of the process.
Caruana Galizia's family has long pushed for Muscat's resignation, alleging that he has protected those around him. The MEPs met with Maltese leaders as well as rights groups and journalists during their 2-day visit. In other news, underprivileged Zimbabweans are receiving free medical services under a crowdfunding initiative started by a Zimbabwean living in the United States. The Citizwayan Clinic, which opened its doors last month in Bulawayo, has attended to hundreds of patients.
Angisebenzi ngumama ophilele BP esibhedlela siyahamba njengelezi nsuku kunzima kulamadoktha so sithe sesizwile ukuthi lapha kulamadoktha sesihloliwe sakhuluma izifo zethu zonke sesiphiwe usizo singela mbadalo sisizakele kakhulu.
Khona vele kudala ezibhedlela abantu babehamba empilo esibhedlela amadokotela ayekhona imithi abantu babephiwa sokusiya ngokuya ukuthi uyayithola yini imali kumbe awuyithola. Ababengatholi imali babephiwa bebhalisa ku-welfare and so forth.
The floor is dusty, the walls filthy, and the furniture decrepit. But for 2 weeks last month, a tiny flat in Harare Township was transformed into a maternity clinic where scores of babies were born. Its owner, 69-year-old Esther Gwena, says she helped to deliver 250 infants as Zimbabwe's health sector tottered, a feat that earned comparisons to Florence Nightingale, the pioneer of modern nursing. Hundreds of junior medics at state hospitals began a strike 3 months ago because their salaries, less than $200 a month, are not enough to live on in a country gripped by 500% inflation. Nurses are only working 2 days a week. Those who can't afford private care, the majority of the 14 million people reeling under an economic crisis, compounded by acute food shortages, suffer at home or seek help from people like Gwena. Senior doctors, in a letter last week, said state hospitals had become a, quote, death trap, and warned of a slow genocide. Gwena is a self-taught midwife. When the health services strike peaked last month, she came to the rescue. In Colombia, stricken relentlessly by violence, Comuna 13, a neighborhood high up in the city of Medellin, whose streets and terraces once ran bright with rivers of blood, resists remaining synonymous with danger, thanks to the initiative of its residents to use tourism as its newest weapon.
Algo primordial es que las personas se sientan como en casa, que se sientan como habitantes del barrio Después la idea es contextualizarlos, hacerles un breve resumen sobre la historia, obviamente conocer por dónde están caminando, qué ha pasado en estos barrios, y ya lo último es tratar de que se lleven la mejor imagen.
Yo creo que la Comuna 13 dio su grano de arena, mostrándole a la sociedad que fue para nosotras suficiente haber vivido esa guerra civil y que queremos sacar adelante nuestras familias y esta generación.
Toda una historia resumida en calles, en colores, en rostros de gente, en esta resiliencia que se ve ahora, que surgió a partir de toda una historia de violencia, de marginación.
Up next, Huawei moves to overturn a, quote, unlawful U.S. subsidy ban. Pompeo and Netanyahu discuss aggression from tottering Iran in Lisbon. Constitutional experts take part in a legal debate on President Trump's impeachment investigation. Trump slams congressional impeachment report as a, quote, joke. Plus, for ABC Sports, National Hockey Festival lands in Tampa, Florida, and continues its tradition. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Eagle News coming to you from Las Vegas. I'm Anna Kui. Chinese telecoms giant Huawei said on Thursday it has petitioned a U.S. court to overturn a ban that prevents carriers in rural America from buying the firm's equipment by tapping an $8.5 billion federal fund.
The FCC's order violates the Constitution, and we have no choice but to seek legal remedy.
Huawei's petition said the ban imposed last month against the company and its Chinese rival ZTE on national security grounds failed to substantiate claims that Huawei was a threat and was a violation of due process and thus, quote, unlawful. Huawei's chief legal officer Song Liuping told a news conference at the company's headquarters in Shenzhen, quote, Huawei is a Chinese company. That is Washington's only excuse. The petition to a U.S. appeals court follows a lawsuit filed by Huawei in March that declared a 2019 U.S. defense bill, quote, unconstitutional for barring government agencies from buying its equipment, services, or working with third parties that are Huawei customers. The U.S. campaign against Huawei is motivated by fears in Washington that the company is a potential security threat due to the background of its founder and CEO, Ren Zhengfei, a former Chinese army engineer. The concerns have escalated as Huawei has risen to become the world leader in telecom networking equipment and one of the top smartphone manufacturers, and following Beijing's passage of a 2017 law that obliges Chinese companies to assist the government in matters of national security. Donald Trump moved in May to block American companies from doing business with Huawei, which U.S. officials have accused of violating U.S. sanctions on Iran. But President Trump has offered a series of temporary reprieves for Huawei to allow service providers covering remote rural areas time to comply with the ban. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveled to Portugal Wednesday to meet U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and called for increased pressure on the tottering Iranian government.
We all know what's going on in Iran itself. These are people that are seeking freedom and a reasonable way to live, and they recognize the threat that is posed by the kleptocrats that are running the Islamic Republic of Iran. So we talked with our European partners about that and how we can together ensure that we do everything we can to create opportunity for these people who simply want freedom and the chance to live a normal life.
Iran's aggression is growing, but its empire is tottering. And I say, let's make it totter even further.
Speaking before setting off, Netanyahu, who faces a corruption indictment back in Israel, returned to a common theme, Iran. He said U.S. President Donald Trump's sanctions against Iran were paying dividends and that he would be urging Pompeo to take further steps.
The first subject that I will raise is Iran. The second subject is Iran, and so is the third, and many more. But I think that we have been fortunate that President Trump has led a consistent policy of pressure against Iran. Iran is increasing its aggression as we speak, even today, in the region. They're trying to have staging grounds against us and the region from Iran itself, from Iraq. And I think that the Israeli-American cooperation is key to that effort that I think serves the purposes of the many, many countries in the region. That will be the first subject that I will raise, including the ability to strengthen even further our mutual defense interests.
Israel, which is widely believed to have the Middle East's sole but undeclared nuclear arsenal, has for years accused Iran of seeking to obtain nuclear weapons and strongly opposed a 2015 agreement designed to address the concerns of major powers. Trump, a strong Netanyahu ally, unilaterally pulled the United States out of the deal in May last year and reimposed crippling sanctions. Netanyahu, who is fighting for his political life after an indictment on graft charges, has hailed the Trump sanctions. Israel believes they have squeezed the Iranian economy, prompting the government to raise fuel prices, sparking nationwide protests. Lebanon and Iraq, both countries where Iran has significant influence, have also seen major demonstrations. Netanyahu criticized European governments that have signed up to a barter system that would allow Iran to trade without fear of U.S. sanctions. 6 new European countries agreed to support the INSTEX system, and Netanyahu said that, quote, instead of supporting American sanctions, they are weakening them. That's not right. He said, quote, they should be ashamed of themselves. While people are risking their lives and dying on the streets of Tehran, they are giving sustenance and support to this tyrannical regime. Netanyahu, who was last month indicted on a variety of graft charges and faces a third election within the year after deadlocked polls in April and September, has been bolstered by a number of landmark steps taken by Trump. He is Israel's longest-serving prime minister, but he is serving in a caretaker capacity after the inconclusive elections. Wednesday's meeting will be the first between the two men since Pompeo announced last month that the United States no longer considered Jewish settlements in the West Bank to be illegal. The announcement broke with decades of international consensus that the settlements are illegal and a major barrier to peace with the Palestinians. The U.S. position offered a boost to Netanyahu as he threatens to annex much of the West Bank, a step that would severely impede the long-held Palestinian hope for a separate state. More than 600,000 Israelis live in settlements in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, alongside around 3 million Palestinians. Among previous steps, Trump earlier recognized bitterly contested Jerusalem as Israel's capital and cut off U.S. funding for the UN body that supports Palestinian refugees. Meanwhile, 3 constitutional experts on Wednesday bolstered Democrats' efforts to impeach Donald Trump by saying the president's actions seeking foreign interference in U.S. elections are grounds for removal, as the inquiry kicked into a new phase in Congress. But reflecting the Washington political divide, a 4th expert strongly dissented, saying there was woefully inadequate evidence that Trump committed high crimes and misdemeanors necessary for impeachment.
President Trump has committed impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors by corruptly abusing the office of the presidency. Specifically, President Trump has abused his office by corruptly soliciting President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to announce investigations of his political rivals in order to gain personal advantage, including in the 2020 presidential election.
Indeed, as I want to explain in my testimony, drawing a foreign government into our elections is an especially serious abuse of power because it undermines democracy itself. Our Constitution begins with the words, "We the people," for a reason.
Democrats have made a forceful case that Trump should be removed from office for abusing his powers by pressuring Ukraine for dirt on an election rival, arguing that the Founding Fathers had a remedy, impeachment for such wrongdoing. In a theatrical, contentious hearing of the House Judiciary Committee, Now tasked with weighing impeachment charges against the president, lawmakers listened to damning testimony from constitutional law professors who said Trump's conduct rises to that level. Referring to fellow witnesses Pamela Karlan, a Stanford Law School professor, and Professor Noah Feldman of Harvard Law School, jurisprudence professor Michael Gerhardt of the University of North Carolina stated, quote, "We three are unanimous." Americans tuning in to the live broadcast witnessed heated clashes between Democrats and Republican Trump loyalists on the panel, who repeatedly forced procedural votes to help stall the process. The new phase of impeachment began a day after a congressional report on the high-stakes inquiry detailed, quote, "overwhelming evidence of abuse of power and obstruction by the president." The report mapped out a months-long scheme by Trump, his personal lawyer Rudy Giuliani, senior diplomats, and White House staffers to pressure Ukraine's president into investigating Joe Biden, the current favorite to win the Democratic nomination in 2020. The Judiciary Committee Chair, Jerry Nadler, said in his opening statement, Trump, quote, "was willing to compromise our security and his office for personal political gain by directly and explicitly inviting foreign interference in U.S. elections in 2016 and again in his 2020 re-election effort." One of the scholars told Wednesday's hearing Trump had perpetrated one of the gravest political transgressions in U.S. history. Gerhardt said, quote, "The president's serious misconduct, including bribery, soliciting a personal favor from a foreign leader in exchange for his exercise of power, and obstructing justice in Congress, are worse than the misconduct of any prior president."
If Congress fails to impeach here, then the impeachment process has lost all meaning. And along with that, our Constitution's carefully crafted safeguards against the establishment of a king on American soil, and therefore, I stand with the Constitution, and I stand with the framers who were committed to ensure that no one is above the law.
White House spokeswoman Stephanie Grisham hit back on Twitter, claiming that, quote, 3 of 4 experts in this sham hearing have known biases against Trump. The 4th expert, Professor Jonathan Turley of George Washington University Law School, the only one chosen by Republicans, had a very different assessment. Turley, who also testified during Bill Clinton's impeachment in 1998, argued there is, quote, "no evidence that Trump acted with a corrupt intent required for obstruction of justice."
And what we leave in the wake of this scandal will shape our democracy for generations to come. I'm concerned about lowering impeachment standards to fit a paucity of evidence and an abundance of anger. I believe this impeachment not only fails to satisfy the standard of past impeachments, but would create a dangerous precedent for future impeachment.
Disclosing that he himself had voted against Trump in 2016, Turley said opposition to the president was, quote, "irrelevant to the constitutional questions before Congress." U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday slammed a Democratic report presenting the case for his impeachment as a, quote, "joke," and lambasted his opponents for proceeding with hearings during his trip to a NATO summit.
It's a joke. Everybody is saying it, and I watched reviews. So this will be actually my last meeting, and I guess there's no reason to have press conferences because we've had about 8 of them. So I can't imagine you'd have any more questions.
And now for EBC Sports. The National Hockey Festival lands in Tampa, Florida, with players and organizers promoting the sport with its rich traditions. Eagle News correspondent Jay Rosquitas has the details.
Every year, USA Field Hockey puts out a National Hockey Festival, and this year is the first time that it's graced the city of Tampa. Let's go check out the nation's best in field hockey.
It's its 39th year. This year, first time here in Tampa. We have a huge variety of divisions, everything from U10 to U12 co-ed mix to adult women's.
We have more than 100 colleges here from NCAA institutions who are recruiting the older players. Plus we have a whole bunch of young players just having their first time on a national stage.
We asked some of the young athletes what motivates them and some advice for first-timers who want to give field hockey a try.
I look forward to all the different opportunities for coaches to watch me and just playing with all my friends.
I would tell them definitely to start out with Rec and Ed. It's a really good way to learn the game, and also it's super fun.
I would try to watch the national team play because they're really good and you can learn a lot from them. And sometimes I just go out in my backyard and I just hit around with my sisters, and even that can make me better. So just get as many touches on the ball as you can.
The first step is just to be able to watch field hockey. So for everybody here in Tampa, this is an opportunity to expose the game here and get the grassroots growing for this area of the country. But if you've never seen hockey or played hockey, you have to watch it to understand it. A lot of people will say there's a lot of whistles. It's changed throughout time. There's now self-start. The game is fast. It's a growing sport in the nation. So if you want to try it, you should come to this event.
We also encountered a women's masters team who were actually from the Sunshine State.
My team is from Miami. Key Biscayne is most of the team. Are an amazing group of women, and actually it's family. So there's men and boys that play down there, and they train all year round. They actually are, plane hoppers. So there's tournaments all over the East Coast, and they get together and travel and compete as often as they can.
And as for the venue itself, the Tournament Sportsplex of Tampa Bay left a lasting impression on the staff.
The grass is pristine. That's the one thing that we have to have be 100% is to make sure that the surface is totally playable for hockey. The ball's moving fast, the girls are loving it, and it's in great shape and quality. We love the Vendor Village, area that we're able to provide and that great experience. Food trucks have been awesome, so many different options to eat. The location is prime just in regards to hotels, traffic flow. Everything's moving perfectly.
And as we come to a close, USA Field Hockey continues to grow the game, serve the members, and succeed internationally. Signing off from Tampa Sportsplex, I'm Jay Raskidis, always one with 25.
Thanks, Jay. That is today's Eagle News. Join us again tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and on Facebook at facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I'm Anna Kui, and I am one with 25.